totally thought you and Jay were gonna like end up together. You guys were super.
Me too.
No, I don't think so. He might think so. He's telling Oprah Magazine he thinks so. And I'm like reading it in the press and I'm like, hello?
Yeah. Hey, welcome to Spill the Chai. I'm Sangita Patel in Toronto.
I'm Aliya Jasmine here in Los Angeles. Welcome to a very exciting episode. If you, like us, have been binging on Netflix shows, you're gonna love today's show.
We're talking about Netflix's Indian Matchmaking. This is something that everyone's been talking about in the Western world, understanding what arranged marriage is all about. And just to break it down, because we have a very special guest that's going to be joining us, and she's the powerhouse of this show. I absolutely love her. This show follows matchmaker Sangita Patel, who's known as the human Tinder, as she guides clients in the US and India in arranged marriage process. And it's really fascinating to see a show like this at a time in 2020, because there's mixed emotions about it, and we're going to break it down with someone very special.
See some of my friends and they're with their husbands all the time, and I'm like, don't you hate that person? Like, you see them all the time. They're like, they're my husband. And I'm like, oh, do we have to see our husbands all the time? Is that a thing that people have to do? Because I'd rather not, I think.
Aparna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I have to ask, first of all, do you have your chai with you?
I don't, but I got it.
Okay,
I
don't
love
worry.
my
Don't
chai.
worry. If you don't, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive you for it this time. But next time, you need to have. We expect the milk. We expect a little bit of cumin. We expect the whole thing.
I even added ginger today. I had the whole thing. I just had it right before.
I know. Cardamom is my favorite. And I have the Hippo today, AJ. This is a brand new cup just for you, honey. I thought you'd like it. You love it. You love it. Right? It's cute. Actually, my daughter.
Crazy cups. Okay, so let's dig into this, because I have to tell you. So I am married to a white guy, and we binge watched this show. And I thought maybe I was just going to be so enthralled with it because of the fact that I have a South Asian connection. But I mean, he was glued to the screen. So what has this reaction been for you since Netflix released the series?
Yeah, it's been about 10 days now. And I talked to some of my fellow contributors, that's what we're called. And you can call them castmates, I guess. But since it's a docuseries, we're contributors. And we all joke, we talk to each other at the end of the day and we say, how was your month? Because each day has been a whole month. We go through every emotion, we go through new experiences. We are all just trying to, keep our head above water. It's been incredible, but I still want to know where my Christmas trees are. 10 months have passed. We should at least be in December or next spring, somewhere.
So, are you single right now?
I am single right now. In a time of COVID, that's not ideal.
No, it's not. So are you still in contact with Jay?
Yeah, I talk to Jay every day. I talk to Dilip about every day, and I talk to Shaker for an hour every day. Shaker and I are really close.
Insane. So it's so interesting to see this process, because this is a real process that happened for you. You actually went to a consultant. You actually talked to Seema about it. What was the questions that you were asked that you found some of them were like, oh, this is interesting?
She just asked me what I wanted, and I had never been with a matchmaker before, and I was like, oh, this is the chance. There's a baseline for everyone, right? He's good, he's kind, he's loyal, he's, all those things. But then I thought, well, now's my opportunity. I get to tell someone exactly what I want. And what if she hears every criteria of mine and she knows the guy? She must know the guy, right? She knows everyone. And so I'm like, this is my chance. So then I start going through this very specific list with her, and her eyes glaze over. And she's like, I have this guy for you. And I'm like, but did you hear my list? And she's like, he is very funny. And I was like, did you hear my list? And she's like, I have this guy for you. And I'm like, I feel like you're not listening to my list.
That was my favorite part, is when you cut her off when you're like, I hate comedy. No.
That's been so polarizing. Why? Why do I have to like comedy? But there was a guy that did improv, and I don't like improv. I don't like improv. I like art museums, but I don't like improv. And if somebody liked improv but didn't like art museums, I wouldn't be like, that is terrible. How can you say that? I'd be like, oh, okay, you don't like art museums. It's a preference, guys. Calm down. The world's not coming down about this comedy thing, but I'm sticking to it.
It's so fascinating too to see how the Indian community, the South Asian community, is reacting to the show in a negative way, saying, oh, they were putting arranged marriage out there in a way that is so not the way it's done. And and it's still, talking about caste system, talking about your skin color. But then you think about the apps that are out there, dating apps out there. And this is the reason I don't like The Bachelor, is because I feel like it's a whole process of arranged marriage that's just brought to a different level. How are you reacting to the fact that the South Asian community are feeling negative about something that's been in place for forever?
I think it's really triggering for a lot of people. I'm hearing from thousands of people a day, and I'm hearing from a lot of women in India who have really gone through some really extreme situations where their voice has been taken out of the process of them finding their match for life. And watching something like this, where I'm called stubborn and picky, but Pradyuman gets a box of chocolates, is difficult for them, and difficult not in a way where they're like, oh, I don't like it, but in a very deep rooted way, in a very sensitive place of that's, a part of their life and their emotional sphere. And I never even thought about that when I went on the show. Like, I've always had my own voice and my own opinions, and that's been supported by my friends and my family. And I was so able to speak to Seema just, about my wants and my needs. And I didn't realize how many women in 2020 are watching the show and don't even feel like they have an iota of that same empowerment. And it's actually been really eye-opening for me. It's been really it's brought about empathy in me, about the situation of women who I feel are in very similar situations as me too, like educated women and women from, a certain background. They can be just like me, but still not feel even a tenth of the same empowerment that I felt to speak my voice.
Mm. One of the things that stuck out for me was when you say, I think it was Seema who said it, compromise and adjust, and she brings it up with the females, and it pissed the crap out of me, actually, to be honest, right? That you had to adjust your ways to make sure you fit with the guy. And you're the one character who decided not to do that, and you spoke your voice. And you're talking about the empowerment as well. Would you ever compromise yourself, knowing the process that she's trying to create this person for you, to bring someone forward to you?
I think it depends on what compromise looks for. There's a line I say where I say, I don't think I need to change or evolve to be a better match for someone or a better partner for someone. And what I meant with that was, I'm in my 30s, right? I've been working for 10 years as an attorney. I have lived my own life. I've had my own home. I've created certain parts of myself that are quite firm at this point. I'm not 19. Like, my political views are pretty set. My vantage on how my family plays a role in my life, that's pretty set. Had I met someone when I was 19 and they said, I don't really like the way that we see your family every Sunday, I would have been more amenable to listening to that. At 35 now, I'm not that amenable to listening to those things, but I also don't expect them to change for me. Like, that's the next that equation. I don't want someone to come in and say, I believe this about, macroeconomics in the world, and I was an economy major, and I don't want to take that away from them. Like, their vantage point and their ideas on small things and big things are pretty set in their 30s, and I want to appreciate that about them and respect them, and I want them to do the same for me. So when I made that comment, what I meant was, let's take each other as we are and not say that we need to be better to be a partner to someone. We don't have to be better. We can also just be ourselves to be a good partner to someone.
Yeah, I think you have a very strong personality in this, and obviously strong characters drive TV shows. But one of the interesting things I found about this series is, in particular, is you have a very strong personality, period, for any kind of reality TV. And that in itself is a very polarizing place to be, especially if you're a woman. If you're a woman and you have opinions, it doesn't matter what color your skin is or what the culture surrounding that show is, you will always be polarizing. But then you also place that very strong female personality into the Indian culture, and it's a whole other level of strength and rebel. They keep referring to this, like, the power of a woman and the strength of a woman and the opinions of a woman as, like, rebellious, right? Like, throughout this series. Let's talk about that. One of the interesting things I thought was later on, and I'm not giving anything away here, but later on in the series, another matchmaker kind of appears in the show, and she's kind of called more progressive, right? She's supposed to be the, like, progressive one, and she says something similar, like, a woman has to has to be more emotionally giving. She should kind of go with the flow. You can't be too opinionated. So I'm just so curious, in terms of, like, watching this back, Aparna, I'm seeing, like, how you were treated, seeing the things that were said about you behind your back, and kind of how you were portrayed. Okay, I love the show. Regardless of whether I agree with it or don't agree with it, or what I think about arranged marriages, the show is so good. Like, you can't stop watching it. It's great TV. But when you read some of these criticisms about the arranged marriages and about these things online, what do you think?
I think that it's unfortunate that these matchmakers are speaking from their own experience and aren't progressing to the experiences of what women, and South Asian women in particular, are going through today. I mean, Geeta is that second matchmaker, and she did move to Timbuktu, I heard, for 20 years to be with her husband in Australia, which is Timbuktu for someone from Delhi. And she made those sacrifices herself. So she was speaking from that vantage point. So when we have matchmakers that are of a different generation who are trying to move with our times and our expectations, there's often a clash. And that's something I saw with Seema, in not understanding or not wanting to hear what I wanted in a match. And for saying things that I never knew she said behind my back. I'm in the service industry, and she's in the service industry. I personally would never speak about my clients like that, on camera, off camera, behind their backs, or anything. Like, I'm providing a service as a lawyer, and my service is to work in the best interest of my client. And so for me, it was very shocking to see that, and, you know, very hurtful, actually, to be honest about it. I mean, that's someone I invited into my home and who I trusted with a very intimate process of finding my future husband. And that's not something I took lightly. That's something that I really believed in and really hoped for and was putting myself out there for. And so to see that was very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you're vulnerable. And I think it's interesting because you are such a strong personality and you know what you want. Do you, looking back at this process and knowing now what a lot of, I'm not going to say all of them, but what it seems like the South Asian matchmaking industry kind of expects of the women who enter this process, do you still like the process? I mean, would you
would you do it again?
Yeah, like, because obviously people,
yeah,
there's a lot of really strong South Asian women and they still use this process. I mean, it's around for a reason. So yeah, I mean, would you still do it?
Yeah, I'm a romantic. I would do anything. I don't think that there's an avenue or a way that I've set that's going to bring the right person to me. I think it could be an app. It could be a matchmaker. It could be me going to a wedding and meeting the guy by the bar that's single too. It could be anything. It could be an auntie calling me up. So I say yes to all of it. And that's how I got involved in the show. I just said yes. I thought, wow, another opportunity. Wouldn't that be the funniest that I had to go on a TV show to find the man of my dreams? And I was like, that could be, you know, like, that could be awesome too. Let's do it. Let's just find it. That was my only intention. I never meant to be a voice for the South Asian woman. I never meant to be villainized on a show. I never meant to be edited so harshly. I just meant to find my husband. And obviously my intention was naive.
AJ, have you ever felt that pressure? Have your parents ever said, you know, you have to get married at a certain age? Did they even try to hook you up with a guy? Like, has it happened to you?
Do you see that I'm brown? Of course this has happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy that
we didn't all meet our husbands at 16 that are our high school sweethearts, and we ended up dating them and not having
not fair. Not fair.
I know. Yeah, it's true. Like, even my sister, she's married to a Portuguese guy, and at the time it was not, you know, when she said she's marrying a white guy, it was like, oh, you can't do this. It's going to be bad for her family. But it wasn't my parents. It was my extended family that were embarrassed that she was marrying a white. Yeah, my parents like, if you're happy and he's happy, let's get you guys married off. But it was that process. But I remember this one guy came to visit me, or my parents asked for my hand in marriage, and I was only 17.
Wait, brown guy? Like, with his family?
Yeah! He came from India and asked my parents in Toronto, and I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm 17.
No.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. So, Kate, you mentioned that you're still talking to Shaker and to Jay. And so, okay, is this romantically you're still talking to them, or just as friends? Okay.
No, come on. Okay. No, they're my friends. And I think that's the most beautiful part of this process, that I walked away with really solid friendships from the most unlikely people. You know, you would think, oh, the matchmaker failed, but she gave me 3 great friends. In fact, I've never even met Ankita, but I talk to her every day for like half an hour to an hour. And we're really good friends. I mean, we just did a Zoom call yesterday, she and I and Shaker, just catching up and saying like, how's life? And we've, you know, I've met Shaker obviously, but she hasn't. She's not met me or Shaker. And we're all just a team now. I mean, because we were very isolated during this process. We didn't know each other. So like on other reality shows, the castmates know each other. They interact with each other. And when the show launches, they have each other as a support system. We didn't have that. On day one, when this launched, we actually didn't even know the names of certain people on the show.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
How did you just After doing the show, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of interviews and talking to people that are not Asian, talking about arranged marriage, how would you describe arranged marriage in India?
Great question.
I don't think that anyone can define arranged marriage anywhere in the world. I think it's a relationship that you have with your matchmaker. It's based on the factors, including your family's values, the culture that you live in. So if you live in a very Ankita-like world where they're very progressive and, in Delhi and, they're very modern in certain ways. That's different arranged marriage process than someone who lives in a more traditional place like Indore or Bangalore or wherever, I think that there's so many factors involved. It's basically like a fingerprint. My arranged marriage fingerprint is different than yours, which is different than Shaker's, which is different than everyone's. And it's because it's all these factors that come into play with it, including the cultures that we live in. Like I said, I'm American, so I also went to school with a variety of and diverse amount, like I have diverse friends and they view dating in different ways. So of course my impressions of dating and love and marriage are also impressed upon by those experiences.
Right.
And Ankita can't say that in India. So like there is no arranged marriage in India. There's no arranged marriage in Houston. It's my arranged marriage. It's your arranged marriage. So I think that's been part of this experience, also realizing that how individual it is.
One of the sayings is if you marry someone, at least in Indian culture, was if you marry someone, you marry the family. Do you feel that way?
Yes, I do.
You do? Okay.
I will always treat my significant other's family as my family, because I say that in the show too. Like we can't really pick our families. That includes their family. Yeah. Like I say, you can't pick your mom, your dad, your siblings, your own children. Those are even a gamble. Like you cannot like your kid. It happens. Like, people clash with their parents all the time, but you do get to pick one family member, and that's your spouse. And they come along with their own families too. And you don't get to pick those, but they are your family also. So better treat them right, better respect them, better love them the way that your significant other loves them.
Has anyone approached you after the show?
Yeah, who's sliding to your DM?
Yeah, like is there? Yeah, like who's calling you and who's DMing you? Is there some potential?
I don't know if there's potential, but there's surprisingly a lot of people coming through my DMs, and I'm like, hello. It's mostly actually friends and cousins and sisters of people. And I'm slightly confused because I don't find the version of myself on television to be who I am. So when someone sees that and then wants to date me, I'm a little confused because that's not me at all.
That's
and
interesting.
At all. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I don't know if I trust this, because you watched a very sensationalized television show. And if you meet me, I'm not like that. And then you'll be like, wait, I didn't sign up for this girl. I signed up for that girl on the TV. Well, you're not going to get the girl on the TV. She doesn't really exist. So.
Wow. What does your mom think of this whole process? The whole television, seeing you on air, like you said, that wasn't you, that was portrayed on the show. How is she feeling about this?
I think she's very protective of me, and she understands that all the positivity is wonderful and that I'm soaking that in, and she sees that and appreciates that. All the negativity from that editing is just like something any parent wouldn't want to see for their kid. I don't blame her. A lot of my family and friends feel the same way. They're sticking up for me in all kinds of forums and places, just saying that, hey, there's hundreds of hours of footage. You're seeing sound bites of a person that's, created for ratings. Like, think about that. We're all just sound bites on a television. And we're sound bites that create stories that maybe aren't true or aren't full or aren't fleshed out. And that's TV.
Yeah. It seems like you're really hurt by the portrayal of you on the show. Is it affecting you that much, or is it just no?
No, I'm more surprised and then just going with the flow. I'm kind of more like solutions oriented in my life. So I'm like, okay, if that's what they did, at least there's good things that are coming of it. And I'm really amazed by all the good things coming out of it. Like I wake up to it. I go to bed to it. I mean, women overwhelmingly, and men across the world, are saying such wonderful things. Articles are coming out. The press has been so supportive of me and, understands that the show is full of archetypes and full of, storylines. And that's what shows are. And I think that's actually a very important story in this show as well, that it was supposed to be this very real portrayal of arranged marriage, but there's only so much anyone can do in one show. And it's not the people who made the show's fault. They couldn't fit everything in, right? There's literally hundreds of hours of footage of me and hundreds of all the other people. What are you supposed to do? You have 8 episodes. Like, you create what you think is the best television. And that's their job, and they did it. The world is talking about it. Like, I'm proud of them. I think they created some magic. Am I shocked a little bit? Sure. But we didn't get preview rights. Everyone who watched it, and for the good or the bad, you know, I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, wow, that's not what I thought they'd come up with. Because all of us had kind of thought that we knew what they'd come up with. You never know until you watch it. And I think that surprises across the board for everybody who contributed to the show. Just because for you, the experience was so full and whole, and then you only get to see these minutes of it. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's very interesting that that's what happened to what I perceived was a completely different experience.
Yeah. You say it too, like, that archetype, like that's obviously what they're doing is like they're creating archetypes. But at the same time, I think for a lot of us watching, whether it was a sensationalized version of it, one part of your personality or not, I don't want to take away from the fact that you being such a strong, opinionated personality is really important for a lot of us, you know, especially brown girls, to see and to see the reaction towards you. I mean, I think a lot of the criticism that you see on the show is about how old-fashioned this is and how this isn't fair. But it's true. Like, this happens. When you are opinionated and you are in a South Asian culture, people do tell you that you need to get in line. They do tell you a man will never want to be with you if you're opinionated. I mean, these are not things that, I've heard that my whole life, you know? And so as much as that was kind of what they showed of you as like a full 360, and that's obviously not accurate, I also want to just make sure that you, like, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but it was pretty incredible to have you in that position, because I think it's important about that.
Yeah. And I think that position also created conversations. And I think that's the most important part about this show. Anything on Netflix will come and go in a week or 2 weeks, you know, it'll go. But I want that conversation to stay. Like, who are we as women? What are the choices that we have? What are we asking for? What do we feel we deserve? Like, that's the most important part. You can ask for things and not actually feel you deserve it, and then it lays flat. It falls flat completely. You have to feel you deserve it. And I think that that's where a lot of women that are reaching out to me are saying that they don't have that feeling inside them, that they can't even ask for it, or that they deserve to ask for it. And so long after the show stops making memes and, you know, creating a Twitter frenzy, I hope that women have looked, and men, you know, but this is largely for me and my character, a conversation about women. I hope that they've looked into their family groups and had these conversations with their friends, and have really explored, you know, what it means to even speak out like this everywhere, not just in the marriage sphere. Like, I have friends that are married. I have older women in their 50s contacting me. They've been married for years, but they're saying, hey, I want to do this in my workplace. You know, I want to speak up for myself in the same way. I want to be clear about what I want and what my trajectory looks like. And I think that's been incredible to hear. That I thought it was just a niche of people that would relate. A single woman, you know, a single woman in her 30s. No, there's 18-year-olds, 50-year-olds. There's women who are taking it outside of the marriage sphere into every part, into schools, into workplaces. It's incredible. It's really incredible.
You know what's incredible too is the rise of arranged marriages in the US, and where the stats are staggering that people are actually going to India to get married. Dowry is still a big conversation that's happening, which is not great. But it's something that I'm surprised that people in this generation would think, okay, maybe I can find my partner on my own. I was brought up in the US. I can look for any culture. It doesn't have to be Indian. But the idea that it's rising is surprising to me, to be honest. Why do you think that is?
I think because matchmaking gives you an opportunity to know more about the person than you can see on a screen. So even if you go to a traditional site like Shaadi.com or versus Bumble, you only get like what they present. And matchmaking takes away, you know, that worry or caution you have about, I don't know this person, I don't know their family, I don't know anything about them. I mean, back in the day, I think the statistics were, even in this country, that most people married people that lived within a mile of them for most of their life. Like, people even in American neighborhoods married the guy down the street. It's because you knew the family. It's because you knew what school they went to. It's because you grew up with them and you identified with them. Your values were probably the same if they grew up within a mile of you, you know, about the way that, you know, you live life. And I think there's something to be said about the matchmaker now in a more global aspect, coming in and saying, hey, the guy down the street might not be right for you because, you know, you might not even have a South Asian man down the street, but hey, I know this family, I know their values, and those align with yours. So I think it's an efficiency thing. I think it's a trust thing. I think that there's all kinds of reasons why we're still using that human to human interaction versus, you know, relying on computers and apps.
Yeah. And you have a sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does she feel the pressure of getting married, or is she married?
She's married. He was on the show. He's a white guy. He's super wonderful and kind. My mom was excited, and my mom loves him. When, I think they dated for 5 or 6 years and then got married. She was married before she turned 30. So I guess that's a weird milestone, right? The 30 milestone. So she's been married for years, and they're a wonderful couple. I mean, they just complement each other so well, and they're so into spending time with each other. He saw that comment I made about the husbands and do you have to spend time with them? And he looked at my sister and he's like, is she talking about us? And I was like, probably was. They spend every minute together. They're like obsessed with each other. It's so cute though. Like, it's just not for me. It's not for me at all.
One of the things when you watch the show is like, it's interesting because in so many ways, and I think why it's just kind of blown the top off this conversation is because a lot of the things people were worried about or didn't agree with when it came to the idea of arranged marriages is really being shown. I mean, there's so many things that are being exposed. And I think the show sometimes is getting under fire for using some of these very controversial things to matchmake. But that's not, the show didn't make that up. I mean, this has been existing for a very long time. This is it's really interesting for me because watching it with, with my guy, he said to me, and I'm curious, I'm curious to know what non-South Asians have said to you, because one of the interesting things that he said was like, oh, I don't really see how this is different than Tinder. Like in his mind, he could never imagine an arranged marriage. Like that's just not normal to him. Like he was he really thought this was something super traditional that happened 100 years ago in India. And he was surprised that it was happening in America. He thought this was Indian. And two, he couldn't believe how much it really was like a Tinder or a website. Like in so many ways, it was like, what's that called? Like a biodata sheet?
Yeah. Biodata.
Yeah. That looks like what,
it is
so similar to Tinder. It's like almost Tinder before it was Tinder. So what have non-South Asian people been saying to you when they're seeing what arranged marriages really are for the first time?
They're talking about how they do relate to it. First of all, a lot of Asian cultures that are not South Asian relate to it on a very deep level. They have the traditions. A Korean friend of mine said, this is exactly like Samdun, I think she called it. And I said, oh, I've never even heard of it. But like, of course, it makes sense that these Eastern cultures have been doing this for thousands of years, and aligning, families the same way, and still rely on that as the diaspora kind of spread them out to the point where they couldn't connect otherwise. So that's been interesting. Everyone from that side of the world understands it. The Europeans see it as like this very interesting phenomenon because they're not so, I guess my hypothesis on this is they're not so close to like extended families. They're more about nuclear families. And so they're like, this is very interesting that you would even care so much about someone's family or where they come from or any of those things. What if you just connected on like about your work, or like met them in the workplace and then you had that in common, or met them in school and you were majoring in the same thing. So they kind of have used their family structures to inform their views of arranged marriage and question even the necessity of getting someone involved that knows families. Like they're like, that part's just not necessary. So it's interesting. Everyone is basically informing their views of matchmaking based on their culture. And that makes complete sense, whether or not they relate to it or not. Right? The Koreans relate to it on a real level.
Are they seeing astrologists? That's the thing, right? Did you meet with one after the show? Are you consistently seeing one? Do you believe in astrology?
So I've had my birth chart read 3 times now, and they've all said by 3 different people, many, many years apart. I think the first one was when I was 24, then I was 28, and then I did when I was 34 on the show. And they've all said the same thing. So I don't know if there's a truth behind it. I guess we'll see if it plays out. But every single person has looked at my chart since I was very young and been like, she's not getting married till after she turns 34. And I was like, no.
I was like, you and your husband, did you guys like?
So my mom checked for my brothers and sisters, but not me. I told her not to. I told her not to check. And I'm the only one who married an Indian guy. But like, no, even my sister who's married to, he's Chinese, was the astrologer said that she's going to get divorced and get married again. But it hasn't happened. But, that's why my mom held out. She's like, oh, I don't know if I want you to get married because this is what the astrologer said. And my sister said, no, I'm getting married. And they've been married for now, 7 years. So, and they have 2 kids. They're good. So I don't know. But I told my mom not to do it. How about you?
Me? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I like don't even know what sign I am. Like I have no grasp on astrology.
Your mom knows.
No, she doesn't. She like it's not part of our culture at all. So
Oh.
I think it's really watching this. I didn't realize like when Seema said like 90% is up to the stars. What I like my brain literally exploded. I was what? Like Mike and I have never like that was very very new to us. Like that was extreme. That was really.
You should totally look into it. You should check your signs and see if you guys are actually a match.
Yes, you should. You should.
Right?
So I love the show. Like I love it's a great Netflix show. We're all stuck at home. It's like binge. Like I'm standing for the show. I'm not gonna lie. But at the same time, there's so much of the show that like irritates everything I believe in. Right. And one of the big things for me was when there was a divorced woman on the show.
Yeah.
The way that she was talked to and what her worth was. Tell me what you thought. Like watching like because that to me shakes the credibility of this entire matchmaking system
Process. Yeah.
How did you feel watching that?
I thought it was just another indication of where Seema was in her own, in her own experiences and the way that she views the world. You're seeing this whole thing through one character's eyes, and that's the matchmaker. So I don't know if it's indicative of all of arranged marriages and all matchmakers. You're seeing it through this matchmaker. And this matchmaker believes that divorce mars you and that you will never recover from it. And she'll do her best. And usually she doesn't even take you as a client.
Yeah.
I don't think that's everyone. I think that's this matchmaker. No. And I was really sad to see that too, because obviously I've never met Rupam. In fact, I've never even talked to her, but I was rooting for her. She was the most sweet, kind, hopeful.
I would marry her in a second. She's
yeah. I mean, she was so sweet with her daughter, and she was this nurturing, kind person. She deferred to her dad in such a sweet way when he said quite horrific things, I thought. And she, she was obviously very serious about the process. She was also on the apps and met this other wonderful man. I hope they're together today. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was really hard to watch that part because, she's a very sympathetic character. She's a character though. I mean, I wonder in real life, we don't know what was said, but the way she's portrayed, she's very sympathetic, and yet Seema is just quite brutal with her.
Yeah. And I'm asking this, I know that you're not an expert at matchmaking. This is like a process, but because you're in the middle of this, storm right now, this social conversation, I'm curious to know if you have heard anything about, and like, I haven't, and the show didn't address it, but are there like LGBTQ matchmakers in our culture? Like, are there matchmakers that take that on? Do you know anything about if that exists?
I believe that's going to happen in season 2. I mean, all the interviews say that they're looking for the most diverse cast possible, and like they're going to do everything to make it look a lot more diverse. I mean, they want every kind of.
Right now, I was going to say, is there a season 2?
I mean, Netflix hasn't said yes, but IPC has very, very, very succinctly said that they want it. And they're like, tipping their hat to Netflix to say like, come on, get on board with us. Like, we want this. That's why they left it the way they left it. And they left us with the cliffhangers, and the people are asking for more. I mean, I think that's part of television too, right? Like the production company wants the network to say yes. And they did it brilliantly. It was quite fun. Even at the end, I was like, oh, a new person at the end? How funny. Although that new person got a lot of backlash, so I don't know if that's funny or not. But there was a new person at the end, so we'll see.
Okay, so what are you looking for in a guy now?
The same things that they weren't shown on camera, but my views have not changed in the past 7 years, whether or not they were shown. I want someone super laid back in the like domestic sphere, someone who's like very chill at home. I mean, they can be like obsessed with their work and, really passionate about that. But at home, I want someone super like stable and introverted and laid back. I want a guy who's very smart, very, very, very smart. I want him to be so much smarter than me. If that's possible, like that'd be great if I can find someone like that.
I love it.
And then those are my requirements. So it was weird for me to hear other people say like tall, good looking, funny. I was like, none of those are my requirements. I just need someone laid back who's passionate about their work and, isn't the funniest guy in the room, is more introverted, more of a wallflower, more like, hey, hon, calm down, like, a stabilizing force for me. And I want to be their excitement for them. And I think that'll be a good pair.
Yeah. And how can a guy woo you? What is that perfect date for you?
If
not axe
date.
throwing. Yeah. What would that be, that moment for you that you know this is the right guy?
On a first date is just when you like click past 55 minutes. If you don't want to leave at the 55-minute point, it's a great date. If the wine bar is closing and you still want to be there, I think it's a winning match. And there are guys, you know, that are just really interesting and fun to talk to, and are on the same wavelength as me as far as my humor. And I enjoy going on dates with those men, you know, second dates, third dates, fourth dates. Yeah, I think it's about getting to know the person. It doesn't have to be extravagant. There doesn't need to be goats or axe throwing or cooking or any of that. But it's got to be like a meeting of the minds.
We have to, I want to get into the ghosts because I have like a full like stand question for you. So let's talk about Jay. You go on this date with Jay. You guys seem like you really like hit it off.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I don't understand his marble countertop painting company. And I feel like they should have explained that more on the show. So explain to me. So his company paints wooden counters to look like marble?
Yes, it's called epoxy, and it can make it look like a new granite on top. So you can take like an old ugly granite and then cover it. It's just like a layer.
Okay.
Just layer it.
And it's a whole business.
Yes.
Mind blowing. I
mean, it's his side hustle. Like how I have my side hustle, he has his side hustle. Like we all have our side hustles. Like he's actually a very successful, like full-time job worker.
We went into a rabbit hole trying to find this company. Like I just want to know more about this marble countertop. I think
my God,
fascinating. I honestly think it's so fascinating.
It's so fascinating.
I think it's
and you're so
paintedcountertops.com. It's on his internet. I mean, it's on his IG profile. So just go find him on IG and then click on his website. And I think it'll probably tell you everything. He said he's actually gotten a couple of calls already and he's done a couple of business. I was like,
there you go.
Like, that's funny.
Yeah. You are absolutely amazing. And the show is amazing. And I can't wait for season 2 when it comes. But you are just so powerful and you speak on so many different levels for women. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I hope you do find that partner because you love romance, right? I bet right now, I mean, if you guys are watching, you know, she's single. She's
single.
Right?
If you're funny, don't even come. We don't want
AJ, you and I are the
consultant
like right now.
Funny. You have to be low-key funny. You have to have like a zinger. Like once in a while you need to zing me and I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm dying laughing. Like, cause you're so smart that you zing. I like that.
That's what she said.
Smart guy that zings.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed watching the show and it was so great having you here on Spill the Chai.
Thank you guys for having me.
And let us know your thoughts on Indian Matchmaking and subscribe below and leave your comments and let's stay connected. Let's keep this conversation going. Thanks everybody. Bye.